I'm Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the NLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NVLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NVLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NVLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoy today's episodes. And today I am very excited to announce that BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. I have had 7 years of therapy, so I know it can help change your life if you not only let it, but work on the personal goals that you set with your therapist. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are the greatest asset. And special offering to listeners of Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/ I'll put in the link in the podcast description for you. That's BetterHelp, HELEP. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. I also want to mention to you that I just launched my podcast swag on Wednesday of this week and have a page for it on my website, and I will also send you the link to it in the podcast description, and I will also send it to you in the newsletter that I usually send out on Fridays. I am now selling t-shirts, water bottles, and a backpack, and they all have the podcast logo and title on it and the tagline. So I'm looking forward to watching the sales and seeing who buys them and spreading the word more about my podcast. Good morning, and I hope you are enjoying the new podcasts that I created, which, again, if you haven't heard of them, one of them is called Shiro, Be Your Own Hero, and that one was about heroism and inspiring yourself to be your own hero in your life instead of trying to look for others to be your hero or mentors. And then the second one is called Think Out for Your Imagination. And that one is about the imagination I had when I was growing up and how I imagined that I could fold up my house into pocket size and take it with me wherever I wanted. And then the next one is Chats, Barks, and Growls, Combos with Your Pet. That one is probably the most fun one because I get to do my voice. And I get to do Truffle's voice. And just, you know, uh, tell you what I think dogs think throughout the day and what they think about their owners. So that one's fun for me. Fun. Happy Friday evening. Okay, so if I mess up this recording, it's because I've had a long day, so hopefully I don't mess it up too much. But I wanted to still do it tonight. So today's topic will be NLD and what it's like to be in college with it. I know I've done this topic before, but I wanted to do it again. And I wanted to weave in a bill that I think is important, that it should be passed and that it should get some recognition here, um, because I'm talking about college and it has to do with college students and helping it make easier for them to uh, go through college when they have a learning disability or learning challenge, as I like to call it. So here we go. So basically what I'm going to be reading first is a worksheet that I filled out for the um, National Conference of Learning Disabilities. I'm part of their cohort um, now, and number 5, and I would like to share with you some contents that they came up with and how I answered the questions. So it starts as the story of self. The story of self tells people why you have been called to serve. It reveals something personal about yourself and explains why the issue is important to you. Why do you care about learning disabilities and attention issues? What compels you to join this fight? And I'll include a link to the NCLD website for you. So I care about learning disabilities and attention to the advocacy issues because I am a neurodivergent. I felt called to create my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, more than 2 years ago because I love helping people, especially ones who have been through difficult experiences in their life, like me. I am compelled to join this fight because I want neurodivergents to know even if even if their learning challenge is invisible, they aren't. I see them and I can empathize with that and with what they are going through. The story of us. The story of us tells the story of why your community has decided to act. It is your collective story that shows the shared purposes, goals, and vision of your group. It also invites others to join your community and rally with you. What issues do people with learning disabilities and attention issues face right now? How common are these experiences? We face the issue of advocating for academic work and personal accommodations that we need and want in our life to make it easier for us to go through everyday life. We struggle with expressing ourselves when we need help because we might not know when we need it, how to ask for it, or who to ask for it. It also is challenging for us to describe to neurotypicals what it's like to be neurodivergent because we might still be figuring out that for ourselves or can't find the words to describe it or are tired of explaining why we aren't making too many excuses for our difficulties. I think these experiences are very common because I experience them, if not every day, at least every time I talk to someone who doesn't know that I'm a neurodivergent.
I also know plenty of other people like me who have these challenges. The story of now. The story of now communicates the urgent challenge that you are called upon to face right now. It provides data and information to enforce your story, and it invites listeners to make actionable commitments to help build your campaign. Why must action be taken now? And what action can different groups take to address these issues? Um, you should connect one of the policy asks in the next rise.com modules. For example, if your story describes your struggle with finding educators who were equipped to support you in your learning, you could connect that with a legislative ask for more funding to support teacher preparation and in-service training on special education. So my answer, I want to support the RISE Act or bill so it can get passed because it is so important for neurodivergents to have accommodations in college. I remember what my first 2 years of college were like without accommodations. They were brutal. I could barely pass my classes, but after I had my accommodations, I had A's and B's in my classes. I still worked my butt off to achieve that at UC Berkeley, but it was a lot easier. Only 17% of neurodivergents in the US colleges get accommodations in college. That is not fair. We can take action and help this act pass by writing postcards to our senators about it. I'm going to use my podcast to help promote and pass this act, but I need your help to do this. Please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com if you are willing to help. Thank you. So, a little bit more background on the RISE Act, and I'll provide a link to it as well. The RISE Act, if I'm remembering correctly, it does, I think, about 5 different things. So, for college students with their learning disabilities, it's specifically for them. It requires that colleges accept that they have a learning disability, that they, assuming that you've had the testing for it, they will accept that, and that the college is required to accept the accommodations that you need, whatever they may be, for college, and that it is required to acknowledge that if you have an individualized education plan or a 504 plan, that it will recognize that plan or the IEP or the 504 plan, and it is required to follow it and to accept it. And if they don't have the right training to help you with your learning disability, they are required to get training to help you. Um, and again, they are required to accept your accommodations. They can't say, no, you can't have them. They can't say, you don't look like you have a learning disability. We're not going to give you accommodations. They cannot do that. So this act, the RISE Act, RISE in all caps, has gone through the House. I don't know if it's gone through the Senate yet, but please, if you're willing to help with this, email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. I'll put that in the podcast description like usual. And work with somebody to write a personal postcard to your senator, whoever that may be. I know we have a bunch of different U.S. states listening to this. I'm going to try to write a letter to my senator about this. Senators, because there's usually 2. So, yeah, please help me out with this. All right, so this episode is about college. So, do you have any challenges in college because of a learning difference? Or maybe you still do if you are in college. I know I did. My challenges were NLD, chronic migraines, and depression. The things that helped me get through this stressful time in my life were family, friends, therapy, and exercise, and my accommodations. It was easier for me to do well in my classes once I had my accommodations and was used to the academic level of UC Berkeley and had a core group of friends. And once I had my dog Truffles up there with me as well, and once I was utilizing the tutoring center more and really taking advantage of the help that my professors were willing to give me and that my mom was willing to give me. Sorry, I got thirsty there. So, my accommodations were having an audio format for my textbooks using Kurzweil. I could record lectures using Sonnocet or Audionotaker and had extra time on tests. Also, once I stopped overeating and expressing my emotions instead of absorbing them through food, it was easier to get through the homesickness and depression I was experiencing. Let me back up there. So, the accommodations were again recording the audio of lectures with Sonosense or Note Taker. I'll put those in the description for you. And also having audio of my textbooks using Kurzweil. And if it was a math class, I could use a calculator and I could write down the formulas on a cheat sheet because I knew how to use them. I just didn't remember all those symbols in the right order sometimes. So, again, unfortunately, I was pretty much bulimic the whole time I was in college. I got better with it um, when I had my dog Truffles with me because then I didn't feel as homesick and I wasn't absorbing my emotions to with food. I was trying to exercise more to get rid of my emotions and express them and just cry when I was running if I needed to, or in my room, or with a friend or family member, my brother, if they were available. And I remember it was very therapeutic for me to be able to um, run and exercise and get through my college stress that way. And I also did frequent trips home because I needed help with the homesick feelings and being able to see my parents and my dog when I didn't have her because I had her the last year and a half of college. So before that, I definitely hung out with my brother often and did FaceTime chats with my parents and my best friend from San Diego, which was useful. And, you know, just to reiterate this, for me, once I had Truffles up there, it was a lot easier. And it's kind of fun having her up there with me because I could take her to classes with me because she's an emotional support animal for me. And I could have her on the airplane with me as well. So I could bring her home with me. And while it might have been hard for living accommodations in terms of having her up there with me, it was definitely worth it. Um, so that was a good experience for me. So on to how I had my mom help me in college. She was my proofreader and editor for my essays, which was extremely helpful because I was not good at academic writing. I'm much better when it's creative writing. And my professors and GSIs were helpful for me too. That my professor, I did, like I said, I took advantage of my professors once I had my accommodations because I knew better how my mind worked, and I was able to ask them for help a lot more easily that way because then I knew how to ask for help and I knew how I learned better. Um, so that's why I kind of waited for that. And I know I've mentioned his name before, Alex, my GSI in social theory. He was really helpful with writing for that class. And so were my other professors, like Jill Bacorn and Professor Burway, Professor John Kaiser, Professor Katie O'Neill. Trying to remember some of the other names. Um, can't remember her name right now, but there was other environmental ones as well. So what I also did during college, this is a different topic then, professors right now, but I did 1 year of psychodrama therapy, which was good for me because this was when I was a freshman and sophomore, I think. I did that because I was trying to release my emotions from the trauma I had been through, which was sexual abuse and the aftermath of that when I was in high school and when I was a kid. Um, so, psychodrama therapy and having truffles up there with me helped with that because then I didn't cry every time I ran or needed to fall asleep by myself without her or without anybody next to me. Um, and I remember, um, yeah, that I'm not going to go over it too much because I know I have another episode in here about college, but it was hard and it was tough for me being away from my family because of how close I am with them. So also I cooked in the co-ops for dinner because it was fun and I was a way for me to create friends. I love cooking and was able to learn some new recipes. I also made um, friends while I was cooking with them. Um, okay, so enough about me. Let's explore some articles about college and NLD. I need a water break first. So the first article is titled, "What's the Best College for Students with NBLD?" by Sherry Maxman from April 21st of this year. Sherry Maxman is a, quote, independent college counselor specializing in working with students with learning disabilities and the parent of a young adult with NBLD. I am often asked this question by parents who are anxious to find the perfect college for their child. The short answer is there is no perfect college for a student with NBLD, and I maintain that there may be no such thing as a perfect college for any student, but that's a discussion for another day. Uh, so, from that article, when it comes to looking for colleges for a student with NBLD, or with any learning disability for that matter, there are many factors to take into account. Much will depend on your child's strengths and challenges, and on how much support and what kind of support they will need in college. Questions to consider or include: what are my child's academic strengths, challenges, and interests? What kind of academic support, if any, will my child need in college? Keep in mind that college academics are nearly always more difficult than high school academics. Will my child need executive functioning support to manage their academics and day to day living away from the safety and structure of living at home with parents? Is my child socially ready for college? What kind of support might they need in this area? Additionally, parents and students might consider the same factors that all college bound students consider when exploring colleges: distance from home, stay close by or travel far away. How important is it that the student can get home quickly and easily if necessary? Size of the student body, big university or small college. Small colleges can offer more interaction with professors, while larger ones will have more opportunities academically and socially. Academics: which majors, minors, or programs are offered? Even if a student has no idea what want to study, they should make sure that colleges have 3 to 4 majors that are at least sound interesting to them. Um, Clubs and organizations. It's always good to know that other students will share your interests. Resident life. What do the dorms look like? Is there theme housing? Do most students live on campus for all 4 years? Does the meal plan look appealing? And can the college accommodate any food allergies a student may have? Close quote. So I can definitely relate to that article because um, I remember when I was in college for about 4 years ago, it was hard for me to succeed, not only because of the academic level of UC Berkeley, but because of it being the first time I was in a regular traditional public school. So I was homeschooled when I was growing up before college. And that did work for me because it made it easier for me to succeed in school because I had a lot of tutors to help me succeed because, well, they weren't paid tutors, but because my parents were able to find ones that worked in that were either currently teaching the subject I was needing help with or did teach it in the past. Or were just really good at math, English, or history or science. So college was hard because not just because of the academic level, but because I was like, oh yeah, I have to walk to class, not just jump on my computer to go to class. Because I was used to an online charter school called K-12 or California Virtual Academy because it was in California. Um, so academic level, the physicalness of going to class and having a huge campus that I was a little afraid of getting lost on. And of course, I did a little bit in the beginning, but I got better because my brother went to UC Berkeley also. So I had seen the campus a bunch of times when I was visiting him. So I was already pretty familiar with it, but not in terms of uh, where the names of buildings and trying to figure out where my classes were. So I actually planned out. I'll share this quick story with you and then I'll go to the next article. When I saw where my classes were, I walked to each of them the first couple of semesters before it started because I wanted to make sure I didn't get lost and I wanted to make sure I knew how long it would take for me to get from my apartment from where I was living to each class, especially the ones that were the first and the last on the day of on each day because then I knew, okay, this is how early I have to wake up if I want to exercise before class, or this is how early I want to wake up if I just want to walk to class and then exercise when I have a break in between classes. This is how long it's going to take me to get home from my last class to my apartment. Um, will it be dark when I'm getting home, or will it still be light out? And just little stuff like that because Berkeley, it's a safe campus, but once you're off campus, it doesn't feel as safe because you're in a city and you're a woman and you can easily get hurt by men or by other women. And that can happen to men too, but usually it happens to women. And there's a lot of homeless people in Berkeley. So you have to watch out for that too. So, and that would be, I'm sure that would be true in other colleges as well. So the next article is titled College Students with Asperger's on the Autism Spectrum, PDD, I'm not sure what that stands for, or NOS, and NLD or NBLD from Mansfield Hall. Succeeding in college with an Asperger's autism spectrum disorder or PDD NOS, NLD, or NBLD diagnosis. Quote, many students who attend Mansfield Hall arrive with various labels such as Asperger's syndrome, autism spectrum disorder, ASD, level 1, social communication disorder, nonverbal learning disability, or PDD NOS. Let me look that up quickly and see what that stands for because I'm curious. So, PDD NOS diagnosis stands for pervasive development disorder not otherwise specified. And it was one of several previously separate subtypes of autism that were folded into single diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder with the publication of the DSM 5 Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Learning Disabilities in 2013. Okay, so again, PDD uh, dash NOS is, sorry, hyphen NOS stands for pervasive development disorder not otherwise specified, was one of several previously separate subtypes of autism that were folded into the single diagnosis of ASD with the publication of the DSM-5 in 2013. And that is from Pervasive Development Disorder, um, and from autismspeaks.org. So I will include that link in the podcast description for you. So back to the article I was reading from. So, oftentimes we are asked how we uniquely approach each of these labels. Although they are variations within each classification, we respond that we work with people, not labels. I loved that. These diagnoses share commonalities that require a holistic approach to addressing a student's needs in college. Social challenges, difficulty with perspective taking, and diverse learning needs to require an approach that addresses much more than just academics. And thus, our four core approach evaluates and proactively addresses how these various characteristics can impact a student's success. When providing support and accommodations for students with autism or social communication challenges, it is critical to address these challenges across all domains. Unfortunately, there is no Asperger's College or college for students with autism, and even the best college is for students with Asperger's still are not able to properly address all of the domains necessary for success. Colleges with autism support programs must not only address a student's academic needs, but also their social engagement, independent living skills, and vocational skills. Asperger's and college success can go hand in hand as long as the impact of these characteristics on a student's learning and living environment are carefully, intentionally, and explicitly addressed. Succeeding in college with Asperger's syndrome can be challenging. Thus, Mansfield Hall comprehensive transition programs for students with autism and other related disabilities address the holistic needs of our students and individualized students' plans based on evidence based practices. Mansfield Hall carefully evaluates the and interprets information from assessments, interviews, and other helpful diagnostic tools to tailor the program to fit each student's unique needs. So I think that college sounds really cool because they try to help people with learning disabilities like autism or Asperger's or NLD, or the PDD-NOS one, because they want to, even if you have that label, they want you to know that you're a person. And that is so important because we can get wrapped up in labels so much, even if it's not that you're neurodivergent or neurotypical, that could do with your sexual orientation or your gender or your um, political party. It can do with so many things. And sometimes we get lost in the labels and we forget who we actually are as a person. And I know I talked about authenticity on this podcast before. I don't like masking. I don't like hiding who I am. And I don't, because it's so tiring to do that. And actually, I think it's hindering because if you try to act normal in quotes, which there is no such thing as normal, in my opinion, you are just going to tire yourself out and you're not going to have a good, you might think you have a good life if you mask your personality, but in my opinion, it's not going to be a very happy one because you're going to be trying to hide yourself so much that you might lose who you are actually, your identity and personality, yourself. And who wants to do that, right? Nobody. Um, and yeah, so, anyways, the last article is titled The Road to Higher Education with an Invisible Disability by Laura Castianda from September 22nd of 2016. And quote, more schools are working to make a degree attainable for students with learning differences. We used to have a saying at Landmark whenever someone would find out about our learning differences and respond with, but you seem so smart. We'd say, stupid is not an learning disability, said Jacobson, now 33. It doesn't mean you can't learn. It just means you haven't been taught in a way that makes sense. Students with learning disabilities, which are referred to as invisible disabilities, are finding that college is within reach. More schools are providing better services to students with conditions ranging from ADHD to autism spectrum disorders to target a growing market. And although the stigma attached to various conditions still exists, advocacy groups have helped reduce some of it, making it easier for students to seek support. But as with, quote, typical students, find that the right college, end quote, fit is just as important, perhaps more so for anyone who learns differently. In quotes, the sky is the limit, said Stephanie Whitman, a 23-year-old graduate from the University of San Francisco, USF. Whitman was told that would be lucky to graduate from high school and shouldn't even consider college because of her nonverbal learning disability, NLD, which means she has trouble understanding communication that isn't verbal, such as body language and tone of voice. In quotes, the key is to sit down with the school's Office of Disability Services and get all the help that you have the right to. End quote. So that article is, I think it's really helpful because it draws attention to the invisible disabilities, and those include ASD, ADHD, NLD, um, PDD, NOS, and also dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyslexia, um, etc. And they let me say that if you have a invisible disability or learning challenge, you are not alone. Again, you are not alone. And you may not know that you are neurodivergent because you might not have a diagnosis for it because you didn't go through the testing for it. But if you are like me, where you had a personal hunch before you went through the testing that you are different because your brain works differently and it's harder for you to learn certain subjects in school and interact socially and go through sports and try to learn them and other challenges as well with visual spatial. Um, I talk about those challenges all the time when I do a podcast episode. My challenges and other people's challenges with NLD and with other learning challenges as well, because I want you to know that you are not alone and that you are important and that you matter and that you are smart and that you are capable no matter what challenges you have to go through, even if you're neurotypical or neurodivergent in this world, or you have a different sexual orientation, whatever in quotes label you want to use. Um, and again, I want to circle back to the RISE Act. Please Google it and look it up and write to your senators and try to get it to pass through the Senate. It has gone through the House already. Please let it pass both the Senate and the House this year or next year. I'm not sure when it's supposed to go through the Senate, but please look it up. Write to your senators from whichever state you may live in. Um, Even if you're not neurodivergent, if you're neurotypical, please do this because I'm sure you know somebody who's neurodivergent, or you have some connection to that and you're an advocator for people who are neurodivergent. Excuse me, or you are neurodivergent yourself, like me. I'm going to write to my senators about it because it is so important for people in college who have a learning difference to get the help that they need, and not to just get it, but for it to be a requirement that it is accepted. Let's raise that 17% of students, of college students with learning disabilities, to 100% who are required to have their accommodations in college. Again, it should not be at 17% of the US for college students with learning disabilities that um, have accommodations. It should be at 100%. Everybody who needs accommodations should have them recognized and accepted and required when you are in college. Thank you for listening today. Good morning, and I hope you are enjoying the new podcasts that I created, which, again, if you haven't heard of them, one of them is called Shiro, Be Your Own Hero, and that one was about heroism and inspiring yourself to be your own hero in your life instead of trying to look for others to be your hero or mentors. And then the second one is called Think Out for Your Imagination. And that one is about the imagination I had when I was growing up and how I imagined that I could fold up my house into pocket size and take it with me wherever I wanted. And then the next one is Chats, Barks, and Growls, Combos with Your Pet. That one is probably the most fun one because I get to do my voice. And I get to do Truffle's voice. And just, you know, uh, tell you what I think dogs think throughout the day and what they think about their owners. So that one's fun for me. As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.